From its humble beginnings during the COVID pandemic, Mendable has developed into a movement with a following of thousands of people across the globe. And that's been a great thing, and many contacts and friendships have been formed. But the problem with being so geographically dispersed is that we rarely get to meet each other in person. So for me, it's a great honor and a privilege to sit down with our good friend Raj Singh and have a conversation and record it on camera for all of you. So Raj, great to finally meet you in person after knowing you for so long.
Thank you, David. I'm absolutely honoured, and it's great to meet you as well. Actually, it's great to meet you in person, to be fair. So,
and thanks for inviting me over to your home here in London. So I had to make the huge journey from South London to East London to get here, which was actually pretty easy.
Yeah. So, especially with the Elizabeth line now, so that's a bit of a godsend, isn't it?
Yeah, that's amazing.
But thank you for coming, and thank you for the invite as well. I really appreciate that.
Yeah. So we did do a conversation, we recorded a conversation a couple of years ago for a different channel that I was working on at the time. But now I'd really like to focus a little bit more on Mendable. But first, as a means of introduction, Raj is the founder, and he also runs his own PR agency, XclusivePR, which you can see his logo here. So I really want to talk a little bit about your business later on. But firstly, the first question, which I don't know the answer to, is how did you find Mendable?
Okay, this is quite an ironic story. Since I've been with the team, I haven't actually spoken about this actually, so it's a good question. So it was during lockdown actually that I came across Sophia May. So I was quite active on social media, especially on Instagram, and I came across her profile because she actually put up a cover version of her track. I absolutely fell in love with it. So I messaged her and I was like, I love your track, I'm supporting it. I was posting it onto my stories. And it just transpired from there that we became pretty good friends. Within a matter of like months, I think that we were starting interacting quite a lot. She was quite humble. And I got to say that Sophia, although she does a lot, she's very, very humble in her personality and just the way she comes across as a person. So it was then in 2021 that she said to me, Raj, why don't you come to our mental health space? I go, what is that? She goes, I've got a company I'm trying to launch. It's called Mendable and it's on Clubhouse. I was like, what is Clubhouse? And I think Clubhouse was quite new in 2020. So in 2021, I tried to find the app. I downloaded it, but it was invite only at that point. So it was like only people that were on iOS, which was iPhone customers, they had first dibs at it. So I had to be invited by someone, and everyone that actually had a platform or on there or had a profile, they were given 3 invites only at the time. So Sophia was like, you know what, I'm just going to invite you. So I'm going to send you an invite and accept it. So what happened was I got the invite, I accepted it, and I set up a profile. Sophia was absolutely amazing in helping me set up a profile. I set up my profile, and I remember the first time I came into the room, I was a nervous wreck. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know anyone in the room. And that's how I was introduced to Mendable. And since then, I've been, I'd like to say, like a regular member of the room. And I've met some amazing people, you know, like yourself. So, yeah, like, that was the humble beginning over there. Yeah.
So one of the things I wondered, because I know that music and performing arts is something that you've got in your background and you promote artists in your agency. And I know there's a lot of people that have been connected through the music industry, and I was wondering whether that was a connection for you, but I guess that's coincidental.
It was, yeah. I mean, it just happened so that Sophia had quite a big following, and it must have been something in the algorithm that showed me her track. I wasn't friends with her at that point. And I saw her track that she released, and it was like a cover version that she did during lockdown. I absolutely loved it, and it was like, Sophia, I love your track. And every so often I would share it, and that's where the friendship started, and it's been flourishing ever since.
And you're also a promoter of Mendable. I know that you're a champion for Mendable, because there's 2 or 3 people that I've talked to that I've asked that same question, how did you find Mendable? And they've said, oh, it was Raj. Raj recommended that I get on, or Well, I knew Raj and he was telling me about it, so then I decided to go on and take a look. So it's great to also be a promoter. I guess promoting things is kind of in your blood. Right?
It is, yeah. I mean, but the thing is, I think when I was going into different rooms at the time, when I was starting to get to know how to use Clubhouse, going into different networking rooms, I found a lot of people were distressed during lockdown. People were getting affected by mental health because certain things weren't working out for them. So I would just say to them, check out this amazing room that we've got going, you know. And at the time, it was a new thing and nobody knew about Mendable. And I think now the brand is so big that everybody knows about it, which I'm really glad, because there's been a lot of hard work being put into it by Sophia and the whole team in general. So promoting, as you said, is like second nature. But I think for me, it was more about helping people with their mental health and just getting the awareness. Because I think the thing with mental health, it's not spoken about enough. And I think that mental health generally is put on the back burner by the governments as well. They don't focus so much on it. Budgets go everywhere else rather than focusing on people that are suffering. So we have to sometimes take things into our own hands and try to do something a little bit different and then help people in a much different way that we can. And I think that was a great way to do it.
Yeah. And a safe space with no stigma, no judgment. Yeah. You know, that's such a perfect way of doing it.
One thing I love about Mendable as well, that everybody's from different backgrounds. You know, people come from different walks of life, people come from different colors, people come from different experiences. You know, people have different life experiences as well. And I think that's what brings the team together so tight. And anyone that comes in the room, you're absolutely right. No one actually gets, there's no stigma attached to them. There's no judgment, which is what I loved when I first came into the room. There's no judgment. I was told that I was in a safe space. And I think that made me feel comfortable when I first came in the room.
Now, I know that for you, you've shared a number of experiences that you've had with the Mendable Room, and I know that over the last few years, you've suffered quite a few personal losses of people. Would you tell us a little about that and what you've been through?
Yeah, so losing someone is never easy, you know, and it can be quite hard to get over sometimes. And I think the most recently, I've lost some friends. It was a bit of a hard thing to take because it brought back some reminiscing memories of my niece. So if I was to go back to 2018, I lost my niece in a tragic tram accident in the Midlands here in the UK. And it was a very hard thing to take because I was quite close to her when she was growing up. And then just to get over that, it was something that was quite difficult, you know. And then I had to support my cousin brothers, had to support that side of the family, you know, and then on top of that, I had to take care of my own mental health as well. And it did get a little bit draining, I think, at times, but going away sometimes helped, but that was like a temporary fix. Coming back, you still had to deal with the upset, the negativity, all the trauma that happened in the family, you know, and I think it can be quite challenging. Last year, I lost a very good friend of mine. He was like an elder brother to me. You know, and it's his 1 year just gone in July. We celebrated his life last month, and we've got a religious function coming up at the end of this month. And then, like I said earlier, recently I lost a very good friend and his niece, and there was a young 19-year-old boy as well that was in this tragic car accident that happened last month. So it can be quite challenging sometimes, but I think I just dive into work. I try to focus on different things, try to be positive as much as I can, because life generally, if you look at it, is quite tough. You know, look at what's happening out in the world right now. Everywhere you look, there's negativity, you know, so sometimes it can be quite challenging mentally to be positive.
Yeah. And losing someone, it is always hard. Absolutely. But I think, you know, to put it into perspective, if you lose, say, an elderly grandparent of natural causes and they had a good life, it's sad. Yeah. But somehow you don't feel as sad as somebody whose life is tragically cut short. Yeah. That's so much more difficult for everybody to be able to deal with. And grief, of course, is a very personal thing. Everyone deals with it differently. So there's no one size fits all. There's no pathway of what you have to do. But keeping it inside and not sharing it and not letting your feelings out is usually an unhealthy way of dealing with it. So.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to touch on that point, David. You're absolutely right. When it's an elderly person, we understand life cycle as the elders go before the youngsters, right? And then so forth, so forth. So it kind of goes down the tree, so to speak. It's more acceptable when an elderly person tragically passes away, although it's still difficult, it's a little bit more accepting. When someone who's 19 or 24 and their life has just begun and they're going to be having a long life ahead of them, that is a little bit difficult to accept. And it's like, it's happening more and more now. Because the more I look at the world, there are younger people that are dying more younger.
Yeah.
And it's really tragic. I mean, look at what happened here in the UK with those girls in Southport.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it was really tragic and it was heartbreaking to see that.
Yeah. And you dedicated your tattoo to
Yes.
your niece?
I certainly did, yes. The whole sleeve on my left arm is actually dedicated to my niece, so that is her name in Punjabi. And basically, it just represents that she never died in my eyes. So there's little bits here that represent her. I mean, she's a great piano player, and she played this note from a series called Narcos, and then I just converted it into a keyboard here on the wrist. She was my angel, so angel wings, a double angel wing, and then she's resting in heaven. And then these are like praying hands with like a rosary bead with her initial B. Her name was Baldeep. So the whole sleeve is dedicated around her. And then if you look at that quote there, where words fail, music speaks. And sometimes we generally do turn to music to get some solace sometimes, because words just cannot say what you want to say. So you just turn to music. And because I'm musically kind of got like a musical background, sorry, like what I'm trying to say is that that tattoo was quite fitting for that.
Yeah. So Raj, I know you're very close with your family, and in fact this is very much your family home, and I know there's a story behind that. Yeah. I know you get a lot of support from your family and you give a lot of support to your family, but your family has been through some tumultuous times in your lifetime. Would you tell us a little about what happened back in the 1990s and then how you got to where you are today?
Absolutely. This is a story that has always stuck in my mind. I was around about 14. I'm giving my age away now. Right. So basically, I was around about 14, and my dad came into our old house. We used to live in Forest Gate. And basically, my dad was like, we are going to have to sell the house because my dad was looking to buy a shop. So we were looking to buy what we call in UK 7-Eleven, kind of a large convenience store. Luckily, the guy changed his mind. We were about to walk out and sign the house off, but then my dad goes, house is not for sale. So what happened was the recession hit in 1990 because the Conservative government decided to go to the Falklands War, and that had a huge impact on the country because the country was in huge debt. So we were shipped off to Wolverhampton for about 4 or 5 years to look after my grandparents when we were younger. So if I was to go back, I was about, I would say 8 or 9 when we were in Wolverhampton. That's again in the West Midlands. So we were then brought back, and my dad was like, okay, we're gonna lose our house. We've been repossessed. Because what happened was the debt was so high. My dad lost his job. It was like a ripple effect on the family. My dad tried to get some money together. He was about £1,000 short back in those days, and £1,000 then was quite a lot. Yeah. And the funds weren't available, so the mortgage company or the bank took the house. And we lived on rent for about a good 15 odd years. And it wasn't until 2005 that we bought this house that we're now sitting in. And what I found was during those 15 years, it was very tough. I'm not going to lie. We were moving from house to house over those 15 years. I lost count how many times we used to pack our stuff, unpack our stuff, we became like, we've got this personal joke in the family that we became personal removal service for families, right? So we were that experienced at it, right? That it became a bit of a running joke in our family. But then when we bought this house, we were so happy. But leading up to this, we struggled for 15 years. We were moving from one house to another. But what we did find was that we were quite resilient as a family. We never gave up. My mum could have left my dad, but she didn't. You know, we all pulled together as a family, and then we put a deposit down and we bought this house. And the day we got the keys to this house, my parents didn't open the door to the house. My mum's dad did. So we were given the respect to my granddad that you can open the door to the house. We blessed the house, and ever since we've been here, and it's like an amazing place. But I think what people don't see is that when they come here, they're like, wow, you got a great house. It's an amazing house, especially this space where we're sitting today. But they don't see the struggle it's taken to be at that point. And I think the perseverance we had to stick together, because families can break over this. It can quite easily happen. You know, people nowadays are breaking over minor, small things. You know, but what we went through hell and back, and it wasn't easy because we would have like friends come round, and the houses weren't the best. You know, they weren't our houses; they were houses of landlords. Yeah. And then we had the landlords on our backs because rent wasn't being paid. My dad's work was up and down. You know, I was young. I was still getting into employment and studying. You know, so I had to cut my study short, not to basically help my dad, because I wanted to work and I wanted to make something of myself. And my sister kind of like was working 2 jobs and she was studying. So, I mean, thankfully now she's quite successful. She's a compliance officer working for an amazing investment bank. You know, so I think our trajectory was slowly going up and up and up and up. And it was in 2021 when we brought my dad a nice X5 for Father's Day. We were like, Dad, this is yours. So that is what we were able to do. We were capable now of doing that. Yeah. You see, and I think the struggles, I think it made us stronger as a family, and it made us resilient and never give up, I think. Yeah.
Well, I was just going to ask you that. Was there any point that you felt like giving up, or anybody, your parents felt like we're going to give up here?
To be fair, we were very fed up. We were fed up as a family because we were like, when are we going to have some stability? Because we were moving houses every 2-3 years, and that's not stability. And it kind of affected my education a little bit as well. Not just that, but I think moving from the Midlands and coming here as well. But I didn't let that affect me because I was like, if I'm not going to be able to study much, I will basically go into work and I'll try to think of a business I can set up in the future. So my thing was then that I just want to continue to be like consistent, but persevere, because I think perseverance is where you can get to. You know, it's easy to give up. The hardest thing is, right, to persevere and continue that journey, right? And you're going to have to jump through hurdles, then you have to jump through hoops and that to get where you want to get to. But there were times, I think, where we were fed up as a family. Yeah, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah. And so you talk about your work and then getting into employment and stuff. Yeah. Did you first have conventional employment before you started your business, or do you go straight into entrepreneurship?
I think I was an entrepreneur from a very young age, because going to weddings and stuff like that, I used to see drummers play, so the Punjabi drums. And my first kind of part-time business was playing drums at functions and parties and earning money from that. And I think the way that happened was I had to learn first how to play the drums, and then I transitioned from that into doing classes and teaching young kids how to play the drum. And then I would slowly start getting bookings. I was to go out and do like bookings at weddings, birthday parties, anniversaries, engagements. And then I went to Germany. I did a gig in Germany. Then I slowly started transitioning into processions. I did the Notting Hill Carnival. I did the Queen's Jubilee. You know, I featured in a movie as well, where there's a small scene at the end with some drummers, and I was part of that. So opportunities opened up for me on that side.
Did you feel that a future and a career in music was for you, or?
I think so, because I think I was always a musical person, because growing up I was listening to a lot of like Punjabi music back in the 80s, and I loved Punjabi music. So I think the natural transition was to go into music, but I think the production side came a little bit later on down the line.
Yeah. So how did a PR agency develop? How did that happen?
So this is another great story, right? I was working at the time, I'm not going to lie, and I was made redundant in 2008 when Lehman Brothers crashed.
Many people were.
So I was out of work for a very long time, and I was doing some community work here and there. I was doing some work experience, and I was working in a recording studio for a friend of mine, and I could see artists coming through, and there was this like, I'm looking for a PR agency, but the PR agencies that they were working with, they weren't actually providing the level of service that they wanted. So in 2014, I took a short break. In 2014, I took a break, and I went to Dubai, came back, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to start a PR company. Mm-hmm. The idea was to help up and coming, independent, new artists to get a platform to release music. Because I had already released something in 2009, so I kind of had an idea what artists were kind of looking for, what kind of publicity they needed to do. So that was then set up in April of 2014.
Okay.
To help artists do, really.
So it's been 10 years.
It has, yeah.
Wow, congratulations.
Yeah,
and so you not only promote artists, but you help businesses, digital marketing for any type of business? Yeah,
so that actually transitioned, if I'm honest. I was doing music for about a good 4 to 5 years, I would say. I was doing music. And then I started getting artists coming to me and saying, Raj, I've got a business. Can you help me with that? And I had businesses coming up to me and saying, Raj, can you help me with that? And I was like, there's a gap in the market here. So then what I decided to do was expand my business into not just corporate marketing, but also keep it as for music as well. So I got like two departments, so to speak. So I got a music department where we could do PR and marketing and digital on that side. But then we do corporate marketing where we can offer all the above services and more. So it kind of was a natural progression, I think, that was going to eventually happen at some point, because I think there was a gap in the market. And that happened more so, I would say, leading the back end of 2019, going into 2021, or 2020, sorry.
Right. And so talking of that time, so that was the time that COVID hit the world and this global pandemic.
Yeah.
And from what I've heard from a lot of people, that the pandemic actually was helpful for digital marketing and for online marketing, because people needed to get their products out there and needed to get the word out there.
Yeah.
Was COVID a help or a hindrance to your business?
It was a bit of both, if I'm honest. It was a hindrance in terms of people didn't have money to spend because their businesses were shut due to COVID. Yeah. So a lot of businesses that were approaching us said, we got no budget, but can you help us? So we thought, why do we turn it on its head, right? And get some testimonials or get some positive profiles out there to say that Raj helped me with this. So what I decided to do was I decided to help clients with free advice and guidance on social media, what they needed to do. So I think in 21 to about 22, I think there was a few businesses that are now making quite a bit of money. They've grown their social media accounts. They took the advice on, they adjusted certain things that we spoke about, and now they are in a good space, I'd say.
I love your logo and the name of your company, XclusivePR.
Thank you.
But I do have to ask you a question. So there's a social media company out there that we knew up until recently as Twitter. Mm-hmm. And they now use X as their logo. Yeah. And the X that you're using is not dissimilar to that.
Thank you.
Is this going to be, again, a help or a hindrance, do you think?
I think it could be a bit of both, if I'm honest. Because this logo was actually done in I think I might get this wrong actually. It was done in 2009, 2010 probably. I was looking into a PR company at the time, but it wasn't actually done properly. But then when I decided to go with XclusivePR, I think it was 2013 is when I actually came up with a final logo. We were just going through different ideas. And I think there were other companies out there with the letter E, so exclusive. So I was like, okay, it's going to be a problem to get a domain name, especially, and that's quite important. So what I did was I came up with the letter X, and nobody was out there, no domain name. So I quickly went and bought the domain names first, and then I started to design the logo. But I think it could be a bit of a positive, whether it's positive or negative, or any publicity is good publicity, right? So
that's what I've always heard. And and you know, any publicity you get, even if it's bad, the worst thing you can do is ignore it.
Of course, yeah, that's so true.
So Raj, one thing I want to ask you, and in fact I usually like to ask everybody, is, you know, where they go for their own inspiration. And a couple of years ago you said that you really admire, you know, many people in business, one of which you highlighted was Richard Branson. Mm-hmm. So if you had the opportunity to sit down and have a beer or a coffee with somebody, would Richard Branson be the person you go to, or is there somebody else you'd rather talk to?
I mean, now I would like to say there's two, to be honest, right? But one is quite controversial. Richard Branson is one guy that I would definitely like to sit down with, because I know his humble beginnings were not that dissimilar to mine, because he started off selling records in a telephone booth after school, you see, and he went from there to having Virgin Megastore. Now he's a multi-billionaire. And it will be interesting just to hear his perspective on marketing, what he does, and how he lives his life, because obviously he's got his own island, I think, as well, right? I think he's had a rocket going into space or something. So he's quite an entrepreneurial guy, and he's really humble, is what I like about him. He's not a flash entrepreneur, you know. And the other one would be Elon Musk, to be fair, because I would like to tap into his brain and see how he comes up with these crazy ideas that he's got. You know, he's got he controls the satellites now, electric cars, and he's doing some stuff in space now as well, I'm hearing, you know. So it will be quite interesting to see what he's got to say about what's going on in the world.
Raj, this has been great to be able to sit down and chat with you here today. Is there anything you'd like to say to the Mendable family or anybody out there, and words of advice and words of wisdom?
I would just like to say, guys, you are amazing. The Mendable team, I love you all, and hopefully, like me and David, we can hopefully all meet up one day at some point. And one clear message I would like to say to everybody, just take care of your mental health. It's the most important thing you can do. And be positive, enjoy life. And as I say here, carpe diem, life is too short, you know, and seize the moment. Yeah. Thank you, guys.
And also, talking about getting together, there is a plan for a Mendable conference in Atlanta in the US in October of 2025. And in the meantime, I hope to be recording many more of these. So please subscribe to the channel, leave your comments below, and join us on the Mendable Room Mondays and Thursdays at 8 p.m. UK time, 3 p.m. East Coast time in North America. And we hope to see you soon.
Take care, guys.